hearing that song this morning, I'm happy in the service of the King. Made me think a lot about what I was reading just a little while ago this morning. I was spending time in Ecclesiastes, which is pretty depressing if you read through the book. It's the wisest man of all, King Solomon, discussing, asking, just kind of coming up with theories about how to be happy. And it's pretty sad book of the Bible, the way he talks about hopelessness, really. Now, I've thought a lot about that idea, happiness. It goes along with something that psychologists and philosophers call the human condition. It's the idea that, at least I think I understand what they're talking about when they talk about it. It's that we are temporary here on earth. And everything that we experience, everything that we do is temporary. But we try to hold on to something permanent. When we're happy, we want that feeling to last. When we're living in abundance, we hope that things stay that way. But everything is fleeting. And that's just the nature of reality. That's how God made this creation. So I look around sometimes and I see people that are so full of joy, happy, running around with a big smile on their face. And usually that puts me in a better mood to see other people smiling. You know, they say if you smile, it's contagious. But a lot of times, I just kind of think, wow, don't they understand that there's so many horrible things going on in the world? Don't they understand that that happiness that they're feeling is not going to be there maybe tomorrow or the next day? And that's really what Ecclesiastes talks about, is that feeling of hopelessness. How can you be happy if you know that there's so much bad in the world? How can you be happy if you know that it's not going to last? Now, the reason that we feel that way, as far as I can tell, is because we are selfish as individuals. And again, it's the way that we were created. It's imperfection. It's part of our sinful nature. When I say we're selfish, I'm not just talking about material things. I'm talking about the way we think about things. It's really the only way that we can think about things is through the lens of ourself. Everything that you experience here on earth is from your point of view. You can study, hope, imagine what other people think, and in a lot of situations with some things we all agree on the same thing. Something as simple as like a color. You know, I can look at these flowers around me and I say those are red. And if you all closed your eyes, you could picture what I mean when I say the flowers are red. But really, I have no idea if what you think red is the same that I think it is. Maybe scientists who study the way vision works can confirm that it's the same. But my point is, we hang on to everything because we can never really escape our own thoughts. You cannot escape your own thoughts, desires, fears. When someone reaches out to someone who's suffering, a lot of times something that you hear is, They just don't know what it's like to be me. I hear that a lot in my job. People who are in rough situations, they're right. They don't know what it's like to be them. But we all think that way sometimes. Even when someone wants to help us in a time of need, you're going to find that at least maybe more with some people than others, but at least a little bit in the back of your head, you're thinking, well, yeah, I appreciate the nice words and the sentiments, but you don't really understand how I feel. But I appreciate you trying. But you don't get it. And the reason we feel that way is because that's all we can experience is what we know. And we hold on to it because it's, I don't know, I guess it's because it's the only thing we can understand. Now the same goes for joy, but that's a lot more fleeting in most situations. That's why our sinful nature exists. That's why materialism exists. That's why addiction and drugs and alcohol and all sorts of distractions exist because people are looking for joy. They're looking for an escape from that feeling of, oh poor me, I'm so alone in my thoughts and my feelings. Nobody understands how rough life is for me. Even if you're, generally happy with your life. But the answer to that is really simple, and that's what that song was about this morning. It's happy in the service of the King. When you serve, you're going to find happiness. When you serve God, you'll be happy. It says peace and joy and blessing that will bring. That's what God tells us. That's what Jesus told us, that if we give, we will receive. And that's what I want to talk about this morning is how do we serve the King? We give. And especially this time of year, that idea is on everybody's minds. Christmas, we call it the season of giving. We have this tradition of giving presents to each other as a way to show, that we care for one another, that we want to make a person happy. And here's something that I think would make you happy and you would enjoy for a while. And everybody wants to be happy, so I'd like you to have some of that. We think a lot about that this time of year, or around people's birthdays. When it comes to the charitable nature of giving to the poor, giving to the needy, this time of year, I read that several times before, that Thanksgiving and Christmas, usually there's an abundance of volunteers and soup kitchens and homeless shelters, more than is actually needed. But the other 360 some odd days of the year, that's not really the case. And it's because it's hard to spend every day, all day long, thinking about suffering, thinking, oh, there's poor people that need help. Oh, there's something that I could do, take time out of my day to make somebody else's bad situation better. And I think that's part of the reason why we celebrate this season the way that we do. And the material side of Christmas, the idea of giving gifts, the Christmas trees, all those things, I think it's a way for us to set aside at least one time a year to remind ourselves that it's important to give, it's important to share. But the true meaning why we celebrate as Christians, we are reminded this time of year because we're celebrating the birth of Christ, the greatest gift that could ever be received, eternal salvation, redemption, and not just a gift, but a sacrificial gift. God giving his only begotten Son for our benefit. And so a lot of us feel more charitable at this time because we're thinking about that and we want to give back. We want to serve the King. And that's great. That's what we're supposed to do, and that's where you find joy, is in serving, and you serve by giving. So I want to open our Bibles to Luke chapter 6. And we'll begin with the 17th verse. And he came down with them and stood in the plain in the company of his disciples, and a great multitude of people out of all Judea and Jerusalem, and from the sea coast of Tyre and Sidon, which came to hear him, and to be healed of their diseases. And they that were vexed with unclean spirits, and they were healed. And the whole multitude sought to touch him, for there went virtue out of him, and healed them all. And he lifted up his eyes on his disciples, and said, Blessed be ye poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are ye that hunger now, for ye shall be filled. Blessed are ye that weep now, for ye shall laugh. Blessed are ye when men shall hate you, and when they shall separate you from their company, and shall reproach you and cast out your name as evil for the Son of Man's sake. Rejoice ye in that day, and leap for joy, for behold, your reward is great in heaven. For in the like manner did their fathers unto the prophets. But woe unto you that are rich, for ye have received your consolation. Woe unto you that are full, for ye shall hunger. Woe unto you that laugh now, for ye shall mourn and weep. Woe unto you when all men shall speak well of you, for so did their fathers to the false prophets. But I say unto you which hear, love your enemies. Do good to them which hate you. Bless them that curse you, and pray for them which despitefully use you. And unto him that smiteth thee on the one cheek, offer also the other. And him that taketh away thy cloak, forbid not to take thy coat also. Give to every man that asketh of thee, and of him that taketh away thy goods, ask them not again. And as ye would that men should do to you, do ye also to them likewise. For if ye love them which love you, what thank have ye? For sinners also love those that love them. And if ye do good to them which do good to you, what thank have ye? For sinners also do even the same. And if ye lend to them of whom ye hope to receive, what thank have ye? For sinners also lend to sinners to receive as much again. But love ye your enemies, and do good, and lend, hoping for nothing again. And your reward shall be great, and ye shall be the children of the highest. For he is kind unto the unthankful and to the evil. I want to share a little testimony. The other day, I was downtown in Bakersfield at a restaurant with my wife and son. And as we were leaving, we were parked on the street, and I had to change a dirty diaper. So we were standing at I was fumbling with the diaper bag and opening up the back door of the truck to try to change him there on the seat. And Joanne was standing there right next to me, and a man came up to us pushing a bicycle. And he's very humble and very apologetic. He said, "I'm so sorry, sir." All I was thinking as I was turning away, trying to get ready to change a diaper, was oh, great, here comes that same story again. I need a bus ticket. My kids need food, whatever it is. And I just kind of rolled my eyes. And sure enough, he said, I apologize, I'm so sorry, sir, I'm so sorry, miss, but would you happen to be able to spare a few dollars? I'm trying to get a bus ticket to get back to Arvin. I had to be here today to go to court, and trying to get back home to Arvin. Anything you could spare? I'm so sorry for interrupting you. And I thought about it for a minute. I should probably, I wasn't even sure if I had cash in my wallet, but I thought maybe I should give this guy a few dollars, and I thought, he's just trying to scrounge together money for drugs, whatever it is. And Joanne, my wife, was standing next to me, and she almost instantly dug into her purse, looking for cash. She turned away, so that he couldn't see. And she pulled out some money and gave it to me. He was very, very grateful. He said, oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And then he apologized to me again for him interrupting me. And I got to thinking that it was about this time last year that I shared a similar testimony with you all. And I remember talking about this exact same sort of situation that happened. And it's been a year, and apparently I haven't changed much. Now, in my situation, I console myself for feeling guilty for not giving when somebody asks of me by saying, well, I already do enough to help the poor, to help the needy. That's my job. I help poor people that are in trouble, and I help people that are stuck on drugs, so I don't need to do anything else. I spend my days doing that. I'm a good person. That's what I tell myself, pat myself on the back. But that's not what Jesus told us to do. That's not what God asks of us. God didn't say, give until you don't feel like it anymore. God didn't say, give unless you already feel good enough about yourself. He didn't say, give to this person or give to that person. Jesus told us that God wants us to give to everybody. And even more than that, not just to give to the people maybe we don't like, or we disagree with, don't get along with, but to give to our enemies, to people that hate us. We are supposed to give. When you really take the time to stop and think about it, I doubt any of you do that very often. And I don't mean to say judgmental when I say that, because I'm the exact same way. I think that's human nature. We're being asked to go against our very nature. Because we're selfish beings. And we're selfish because all we know really is ourselves and how we see things and how we experience things. Even if we try to be sympathetic, even if we try to have empathy for others, you can never really know what it's like to be somebody else. So it's easy to think, I should give, or I write a check to Salvation Army once a year, I volunteer my time for Boys and Girls Club. Whatever it is that you may do that satisfies that feeling that you need to give, it's okay to feel happy about that. We're told that you will feel good about yourself if you give. We're not supposed to do it for that reason, and I'm going to talk about that more in a minute, but it's okay to feel good for what you have done to help, but that's still not enough. You should feel like you need to do more. And not just even feel like you need to do more, you should want to do more. We're not just asked to serve, and by serve, give, but we're asked to do it joyfully. Not just because we're told to, and oh, I have to do this in order to check that off the box. You're supposed to want to. You're supposed to want to see joy in other people's faces. You're supposed to want to see your enemy happy. So let's turn to Luke. Well, before I turn, I'm going to turn to Luke 21 in a minute, but first I want to go back to the 29th verse that we just read in the 6th chapter of Luke. Beginning with the 29th verse, it says, "And unto him that smiteth thee on the one cheek, offer also the other. And him that taketh away thy cloak, forbid not to take thy coat also. Give to every man that asketh of thee, and of him that taketh away thy goods, ask them not again." Now, I read a little bit more about those verses to try to understand. You know, I talk a lot up here about the idea that we're reading, you know, a form of Old English that interpreted, in this case, the Greek. And a lot of times that's why it's, you know, harder this many hundreds of years after it was translated for us to understand it, because we don't speak that same English. And a lot of times what we read, I pray that God gives us all understanding, whatever it is that he wants to impart. But still, sometimes when we read this, we might be taking words the wrong way, using them the way that we use today. So I was curious about that, especially when it says, "And of him that taketh away thy goods, ask them not again." Now, first of all, the verse before that, when we're told, after the turn the other cheek part that we all know, "Him that taketh away thy cloak, forbid not to take thy coat also." And we're being told if someone steals your coat, give them your shirt as well. That's what's being said right there. So it's not just if someone asks you, "Hey, can I have a coat? I'm cold," give them your coat. It's a step beyond that. If somebody steals from you, not only are you supposed to just be okay with it, accept that they needed your coat, that's why they stole it, you're supposed to go even further beyond that, another step beyond that. And you're supposed to say, "Here, take my shirt also." Now, I can't think of any time in my life where I've done that. At least I can't remember any. If somebody steals from me, I usually get pretty upset. That's why we have a criminal justice system. We punish people for theft. God said theft was a sin. Why should we let people get away with it? Well, as much as I can put together here, it's because it's not our job to judge. They'll be judged by God. Whatever their behavior is none of ours. What is our concern is that somebody needed a coat. It doesn't say if somebody steals your coat because they have kids at home that are cold, then give them your coat. It doesn't say if somebody steals your coat because they're going to sell it to buy drugs, don't give them your coat. It says if somebody steals your coat, let them have your coat. And then go one step beyond that and give them your shirt also. A couple of years ago, my truck got broken into. They smashed the back window and stole some very expensive speakers that I had in there, ripped out a bunch of wires and things that I had in the console. I had custom wired this charger and everything to make my old 99 pickup a little bit more modern. And the way I had done it was very specific to that truck, and whoever stole it was just a smash grab. They just saw a wire, this must be expensive, yanked it out. It wasn't really worth anything to anybody else. Man, when I saw that, I was so angry. Not just because of the several $100s that was taken from me, but all the time that I had put into that, and the fact that they're not even going to get any good use out of it. Why did they want that in the first place? And again, you all know that with my job, I represent people who've been accused of crimes, and I can tell you the very first place my thought went was, I can't wait for the next client I get who's accused of theft, because I'm not going to do a darn thing to help them. It took me a couple of days to feel guilty for thinking that way, but that's human nature. But it's right here in black and white. I mean, it's not conditional. There's no qualifier around it. It just says, if somebody steals from you, let them have it. And even more than that, give them more than what they stole from you. Now, I could have tracked down the guy who took my stereo and equipment and said, hey, you need a truck, you can have the rest of it. I don't think there's anybody out there that would do that. Now, maybe some of you have been in a situation before where I've heard stories, where someone's been caught stealing, and then people just say, do you need more? And they actually will give more. I've heard stories like that, so I know it's possible for us to do, but I'm pretty sure I've never been that compassionate, been able to do that. But that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to want to do that. Now, that's where I started to read the verse after that. And when it says, give to every man that asketh of thee. Give to anybody that asks. That guy that asked me for some change to get back to Arvin on the street the other day, he was every man. He was one of every one of us. That's all it says there. It says, give to every man that asketh of thee. It doesn't say, give to those who you know are going to use the money to buy food. It doesn't say, give to those who you know really actually need it. It doesn't say, give to those unless you think they're taking advantage of you. It says, give to whoever asks you for it. And then after that, and that's where I looked for a little bit more clarification in the modern English, where it says, and of him that taketh away thy goods, ask them not again. And what that means there in a little more modern English is don't ask for it back. If you give something, don't be, as kids we call it being an Indian giver, which is probably very politically incorrect now. Now they don't say sitting Indian style anymore either. But it's the idea that if you give, don't take back. Don't ask for it back. Don't regret giving and then ask for it back. If somebody takes from you, let them take it. Don't ask for it back. Again, that's a very tall order. I find it pretty hard in most situations to, one, somebody steals something from you, just let them steal it. 2, go a step beyond that and give them more than what they stole. And 3, don't try to get it back. I definitely have never experienced that before. Now, again, I'm supposed to not just feel like I have to do that, I'm supposed to want to do that. I'm supposed to joyously say, thanks for stealing from me, here you go. Oh no, no problem, keep it. Now let's turn to Luke in the 21st chapter. Beginning with the first verse, Luke 21. And he looked up and saw the rich men casting their gifts into the treasury. And he saw also a certain poor widow casting in thither 2 mites. And he said, Of a truth I say unto you, that this poor widow hath cast in more than they all. For all these have of their abundance cast it unto the offerings of God, but she of her penury hath cast in all the living that she had. She, worded a little bit differently, she has contributed out of her lack and her want, putting in all that she had on which to live. When I worked for the Boy Scouts, part of my job was fundraising. We would hold, certain campaigns, go around and ask businesses. I'm just talking about when you see the Boy Scouts out selling popcorn to support their troops and stuff. It takes a lot more money to keep that program going. They have central offices that maintain all the records and that promote it and take care of situations with organizations that sponsor a troop, different churches, Rotary clubs, and things like that. And there are people employed full-time to do that. I did that for a while. That's something you might remember. Part of my job was fundraising. And something that I learned while I was there was that statistically, I guess it's like that across the board, at least in North America, but it was especially true even where I worked, here in Kern County and also in southern Colorado, that you would think if you're trying to get money for a good cause for your organization, you want to go after the big fish, some wealthy businessman in town, he's the guy to ask for a donation, which is good. A lot of times you can get that. But we actually raised a lot more money from people giving $10, $20 here and there out of their pockets. People that could barely afford to give that. 3 to 4 times more money came from that kind of source as opposed to a big business or a wealthy person who had the ability to give, say, $100,000. That was kind of eye-opening for me. And what I was experiencing there is exactly what Christ talks about here. It's sacrificial giving. Now, I'm sure when somebody who is hungry gets fed because I've given something to help, I'm sure that God finds joy in that. I don't think God wants us to suffer. So when we do suffer, and that suffering is relieved because of other human beings, it's the way God, wants his creation to function. But that's not the reason, at least from what I understand reading here what Jesus is talking about, that's not the reason why we give. It's not just to feed that person so that they can actually nourish their physical body. It's the act of sacrifice. We're being asked to make a living sacrifice, to practice a way of life where we give up something. That's what God said we need to do in order to show our thanks, in order to show our praise for receiving the greatest gift. We give back everything that we have, which is already God's to begin with. It's meant to be sacrificial. Sure, it's great that the super wealthy guy gives $1 million to some organization that feeds the hungry, houses poor people. But if they've got $200 million sitting around, that's not really that big of a deal for them. So it's great, it helps. But that's not what we're talking about here, what God requires of us. God requires of us a sacrifice. Now, I've thought about that several times before. How much are you supposed to give? When have we given enough? When is it okay to feel like, no, I don't need to give that guy $1 today because I did enough good this week already? The short answer is never. And I think I've shared this testimony before too. Again, it was probably around the same time last year, talking about the season of giving and sacrifice. I can remember in high school one time, I went to BHS, and friends and I were driving to get some lunch, and on the corner of, I think it's Oakland, California, a guy was standing on the corner dressed like Jesus. Long flowing robes, had a long beard, long hair. And he had a big wooden cross made out of 4x6s. Like it was actually really heavy, or at least looked that way. A while back I saw a guy at the courthouse with a similar thing, except he was smart about it. He put a wheel on the bottom of the cross so it would be easier to drag along. This guy, he was standing on the corner, and I felt compelled to go talk to him. I don't know why. I guess it was just curiosity. And I don't remember what I said or what I asked him, why are you doing this, or something like that. But all that I remember out of the conversation was that he told me that he came all the way from Florida, where he had a family and a job. God told him to take up the cross and walk across the country. Now, 20-something years later, I still think about that. And I think about it when I think, when have we given enough? When is it okay to not give? And I think that's a tough question to answer. Now, in that man's situation, I have no way of knowing that God actually required that of him. God actually spoke to his heart and told him, go do this. That may be the case. He also may have been talking to himself. May have been voices in his head that were not God's. Could have been evil influences trying to get him to give up on his wife and kids. Most people would just jump to the conclusion that there's some sort of mental illness. Anybody that would be willing to do that must be crazy, must have some kind of condition. That may be the case. I don't know. I think sometimes though when I think about that, I think how many other people like me 20 some odd years later, still think about that. How many people who spoke to him question, am I giving enough back? Am I doing what Jesus said I need to do? And how much good comes out of that? I think when I've thought on that, it's made me want to give more. And it's probably influenced when I do and how I do. But at the same time, it's hard for me to believe that God would want someone to give up on his job and his family and walk across the country. It's also hard for people to believe that he asked a man who everyone said was him to die on a cross. But we're taught that we are not to understand God's plan. It's impossible. And again, that's going back to where this all started. We are selfish. All we know is ourself. All that we can understand is what we have experienced, what we've thought. I think there's actually been times in my life where, and it's probably because I had that influence, I've heard a voice in the back of my head saying, you should give up everything you're doing. Just give away everything and go be a monk. Give away everything and devote your life, to serving in the Peace Corps or whatever it is. And my next thought is, that's crazy. I can't do that. I've got my own life here. I have family. I have my own wants and desires, and I think I should get out of life. So why would I ever do that? But people do that. And I believe it's God's will, at least in some situations. Now, I guess I don't really have an answer to that. I don't know if the Bible gives us a clear answer on when have we given enough, other than never. I think we are never to feel like we have fulfilled our duty to God until we're done. And that's because we're not given a quota. It's a living sacrifice. I've preached on this before, that in the old days and the times of the law of Numbers and Deuteronomy, sacrifice was actually a little bit easier. You took an animal that you would otherwise be eating or selling to someone else so that you could afford to feed your family. You killed it and you burnt it. And then, all right, I'm done for now. I did what God asked me to. Fulfilled that, I can move on and do my thing. Or for those who couldn't afford it, that's why they sold doves in the marketplace outside the tabernacle, so that people that didn't have a calf to give, they could sacrifice a bird and still partake in sacrifice. Again, pay a couple dollars for a bird, kill it, and sacrifice it. All right, God, there you go, thanks. I'll see you next time. That's the way a lot of us treat our faith. It's easy to get complacent and think that our faith, our duty to God is show up on Sunday, show up at Christmas time, whatever. Okay, I'm good. Now I can move on to the next thing. But we're asked to give a living sacrifice, a continual state of mind or state of being, of giving. I turn to Matthew, the 6th chapter. I'm going to read the first 4 verses of Matthew 6. Take heed that ye do not your alms before men, to be seen of them. Otherwise ye have no reward of your Father which is in heaven. Therefore, when thou doest thine alms, do not sound a trumpet before thee, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may have glory of men. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. But when thou doest alms, let not thy left hand know what thy right hand doeth, that thine alms may be in secret. And thy Father, which seeth in secret himself, shall reward thee openly. And then it goes on to talk about how we should treat prayer the same way. The hypocrites, the Pharisees, then and now, the joy or the fulfillment that they get, that sometimes we get, out of giving comes from the recognition for it. Feels good to have other people think you're a good person. It feels good to be thanked. And it's a natural thing for us to get that sensation of joy out of that for having done it. But we're told not to do that. We're not supposed to brag about what we give. And I've talked about this before too. That I've thought a lot on the idea before of how much value is there in sharing when you've been charitable in order to encourage others. Because sometimes, and again that's something that I learned working in fundraising, was that when other people see that other people have given, they want to give more. Usually that's out of a sense of pride. I want to be as good as that person. I want to be as respected as that person. They gave this much, I better give that much, or else the community's not going to think I'm as good as them. Now again, that's all well and good. If it's helping somebody, it's helping somebody, and I'm sure that brings glory to God. But that's not fulfilling the duty to God. That's doing something for pride. That's doing something when your right hand does know what your left hand is doing. I only made it about halfway through where I was going this morning, and I actually thought I wasn't going to go on as long as I have already. But I want to turn to 1 Corinthians, the 13th chapter. This follows up on what we were just talking about in Matthew. 1 Corinthians 13. And though I bestow, 13th chapter, jump to the 3rd verse. And now, though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, and have not charity, it profiteth me nothing. Now, if you remember, I've talked about this a few times. What got translated as charity there is not charity how we talk about it in modern day. In the New International Version, it talks about with love, and that's where it goes on to use that verse that everybody uses in wedding ceremonies. It's not actually talking about romantic love. Again, this is agape. This is the highest form of love. The love that God gives us and that we share with others. So remember, that's what he's talking about here. The absolute highest form of love. You can give your goods to feed the poor. You can give your body to be burned. I'm not sure who that would help, but I think he's trying to say you can make the ultimate sacrifice. You can give away your life to help somebody else. But if you don't do it because you're trying to spread God's glory, God's love, it's worthless. It's not worth anything to God. So we shouldn't be giving for pride. We shouldn't be giving for self-gain. There's only one reason we should be giving, and that's out of duty, yet a joyful duty. I want to share another testimony that again I probably shared around this time last year. And I don't mean to embarrass my parents, but I'm going to share a story of when I was little. I was with my mom, and we were at the McDonald's downtown going through the drive-thru, and an old lady pushing a shopping cart came up to the car. And she may not have even come up to the car. She may have just been standing on the other side of the parking lot. I don't really remember. But what I do remember is that either before or after we went through the drive-thru, Mom pulled some money out of her wallet and got out of the car and walked over and gave it to the lady, and she came back. And at the time, I don't know, maybe I was 4. I was young enough that I didn't understand the concept yet of charity, and charity in the sense that we use the word today. I didn't understand yet that there were people that were in need. I was young enough that I still, thought, well, everybody just must be the same way that I am. And that's when I learned that lesson. I asked my mom, why'd you do that? And she said, because she needs it more than us. And that's why we're not asked not just to give sacrificially. Beyond that, if somebody takes from you, you let them have it. Because if they asked for it or if they took it, God says they need it more than you. And that's where I want to share another story. Again, I've shared before. I learned much later on, I think, as an adult. And that was from my father. It was on the same subject. He and I were having a conversation at some point about giving, and about giving people $1 on the side of the street. A beggar asks you for something. And we were talking about how he struggled with the idea before, like a lot of us do, like I did. I told you, the first place where my thought went this last week, when I was being selfish, was probably for drugs, probably for alcohol. If they really needed it for food, I'd give it to them. They're just going to go buy some booze with it, so I'm not going to give anything to them. And in a conversation, my dad said that he'd come to the conclusion, or at least maybe just at one time that he was thinking about, was that maybe that's what they need right now. Now, I'm not advocating that we should enable people to, abuse substances or to continue with a habit. But the point is that Christ didn't say, give unless you think they're going to spend it on drugs. Christ didn't say, give as long as you know they've got kids at home that they need to feed. God said, give and don't ask for it back. He said, if somebody asks, give. What somebody does with your gift afterwards is none of your concern. Even if they do go and spend it on drugs, you shouldn't have given them that, even feed them. It shouldn't be that, well, I'm going to give them money because I want them to eat, or I'm going to give them money because I feel bad for their kids. Those are all human emotions that we're going to have too, but that should not be the underlying core reason why you did it. It should be because God said, do it. I want to close with Matthew. Matthew 25th chapter, beginning with the 31st verse. And I challenge everybody here over the next month as we all, get consumed with material things and even the joy of giving gifts to our loved ones, and, celebrating the season. Keep this in mind. And keep it in mind after. Beginning with the 31st verse. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory. And before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was an hungered, and ye gave me meat, and was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me in, naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and ye came unto me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered, and fed thee, or thirsty, and gave thee drink? When saw we thee a stranger, and took thee in, or naked, and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick, or in prison, and came unto thee? And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. Then shall he say also to them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was an hungered, and ye gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me not in, naked, and ye clothed me not, sick, and in prison, and ye visited me not. Then shall they also answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered, or athirst, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister unto thee? Then shall he answer them, saying, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye did it not to one of the least of these, ye did it not to me. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal. Dear Lord in heaven, thank you for bringing us together here today as we enter into or continue on in this season of giving, as we celebrate the sacrifice that you've made for us. Please let it be a time of remembrance for us to give sacrificially. Please help each of us to set aside our pride, and when someone asks, gives. Please help us to remember that, as you said, what you've done to the least of me, you've done to me, or the least of my brethren, you've done to me. And know that when that man or woman comes up to you on the street and asks for a few dollars, that is God. God is in that person and what you do to that person. God will judge you for. Please help us to keep that at the forefront of our mind and to live sacrificially in your name, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I'll take up the morning tithes and offering.